So my name is Ian Ginn. I'm the host of Digital Talk. If you're listening this for the first time from Series 1, you'll know this podcast was born out of the work I've done as a judge for the GLOMO Awards, the GSMA, which really does celebrate innovation and transforming lives. We are lucky to be media partners this year at NetworkTech, so we thought it'd be a perfect opportunity to do a wrap-up. So I'm delighted to have three guests with me, and I'll just introduce them all. I'll start with Jason Walls, who is Director of the Technical Marketing at QA Cafe and plays a leading role in driving key telecom standards like TR069 and the User Performance UPS at the Broadband Forum, shaping recent innovations in broadband and user service management. My next guest is Markus Kummerle, leading Deutsche Telekom Magenta API Capability Exposure Program and chairs the CAMARA Outreach Committee, pioneering telco API standards and commercialization through open gateways and developer-focused initiatives in recent years. And last but certainly not least, Dana Gorelik, who is a senior analyst at Omdia, specializing in European telecom markets, and she leads research on service providers' fixed mobile convergence strategies and analyzing the impact of innovation AI solutions on connectivity and digital platforms in the sector. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we've agreed a few topics, and really good to have you as my guests. So I'll start off. I think it's good to sort of give a frame of what the event is for our listeners who haven't come across NetworkX before. So first of all, I think it's worth saying it is the flagship event for Informa Connect. So they bring together all the various aspects of telecommunication. This year was held in Paris. One of the things I wanted to just highlight, which I like, is the keynote. So Dario Talmesio does the initial keynote and he sort of sets the scene for the event. So one of the things he came up with that operators can actually think about obviously using AI internally, but also provide as a service. I know we maybe have, let's say, a Western look at the world, but I can tell you there are a number of countries where the idea of having an Amazon cloud is not something they're going to be doing in the next period of time due to sovereignty reasons and other reasons. Which brings me on to another topic he raised, which was a major part of the event, sovereignty. For the first time, instead of people just assuming a cloud is a cloud, thinking about that. The big buzzword around AI was agentic AI, and I want to break that down into two things, which is autonomy aspect of the thing does it itself. The other important aspect is called agency, which is the fact that it actually sort of takes data and then makes a decision on the back of that. So those are sort of things I took from his opening speech. There's about 5,500 guests in total, up on the previous year, which I think about 5,000. 100 countries represented, of which 23% they say from CSPs, because this has actually been recorded after the event, so we have these numbers. Europe is obviously being in Paris, most of the people came from Europe, but outside of that, US and Turkey were majorly represented. And we covered the various topics from artificial intelligence, fibre, Wi-Fi services, data centers, optics, IP transport, mobile services, and satellite and fixed wireless access. So those are the sort of main themes. So it's actually really quite all-encompassing as well. Yeah, I think those are the sort of key things I just wanted to make as an initial reflection and get your views on that. And what were your views on the event? Jason, do you want to start?
It's very important, I think, that the coverage is like you described it, because I think, and I think there's something that everybody will agree on, is that the direction that everything is going is to sort of harness the realization that the consumers don't care how they get their network connectivity, right? It's all the same to them, right? And as the different technologies sort of converge in terms of like who's offering them and who's talking about them and who's working on them and getting them literally to converge, and then with a lot of the stuff that Marcus is going to talk about. That's what NetworkX is now, right? Which is great because it's a nice and oddly a niche without being a niche, because like Mobile World Congress is insane, and on the other side, CES is insane, whereas NetworkX is like a good, like it's just focused enough,
Yeah. And I think you also wanted to comment about it's a great place to meet people, right? I think that was something.
Oh yeah, well, it's just I think people that one of the things that I kind of always talk about on my show is that like we all thought that trade shows would go away after COVID, right? And people would suddenly be like, "Oh, we don't have to travel. Okay, we won't." But it turns out that it was exactly the opposite was true, and people were craving it, and it's invaluable to go and meet people in person. Like I can't even tell you the number of times where like even customers of ours that I didn't even know were there happened to be standing in another booth where we were sitting right there, and we never would have gotten a chance to talk to them if they weren't just walking by, you know.
Yeah, yeah. That's true. And Marcus, what about you? What did you think of the event?
It was a fantastic event. So for me, the highlight was to have an exchange with a lot of people, because it was possible to meet other operators, but also some vendors, which was really a very, very good and great thing. Unfortunately, on the event, we CSPs, we don't meet our customers. So we cannot make business there. That's a little bit the pity on the whole thing. But the exchange with the others is very important because we can share experiences, we can align in topics. So it's a great value, and also it was a highlight for me to be on stage. One time on the big main stage and then 2 times on separate stages. It was good to be visible with the topic, to be in contact with people. So fantastic event.
Yeah, fantastic. Yes, great exposure for you. And Anna, what are your view of the event?
Yeah, I think I'd agree that I think event was great. It was pretty much about innovation in action. A lot of talks about AI across networks, 5G monetization, and fiber rollouts dominated the conversations. And also the demos on the expo floor were impressive, and seeing vendors showcase real-world applications gave a sense of how fast the tech stack is evolving. Plus, I think the collocated forums on data center and broadband added some depth. Yeah, it felt like industry is moving from hype to execution. And I'd agree that networking was fantastic, whether it was Emerging Telecoms Leaders Program, which I think they introduced this year, or just catching up with peers over coffee. You just could feel that energy of an industry. Yeah, I think it was a great event.
I think a challenge I had is that because I'm someone that like sort of eclectically gathers things, and like I'm thinking when you go through the agenda on the app, you're like, I want to go to that one, I want to go to that one, and basically I'm one human and I haven't got a digital twin, so I think that I found a bit challenging from an organizational perspective. But there you go.
Yeah, I definitely needed clones.
Yeah. But Jason, serendipity, I think, is the word that we're looking for, which is like by chance meeting people, which, as you say, absolutely happens at these events all the time, and it is incredible to do so. And you end up having a discussion you wouldn't have otherwise. It's as simple as that. Also with strangers, right, as well, bump you into people. So that's great. But we also, moving on to the first topic that we sort of wanted to cover, other than just a general introduction to the show, is I'm going to call it fiber in a broader context. But as you know, actually, if this was a merger, I mean, the Network X comes from a merger of background in the background of various events. And I liked Dana's comment about data centers also, because we know that's a very huge growing market and these things are all fusing together. But basically, yeah, it's fiber and broadband, which has sort of been the historical background of this event. So I think it's a good event to start on. So, Dana, I think you wanted to give us an overview of some of the aspects of that you think are relevant for us to discuss.
Thank you. Just wanted to add some comments where Europe stands with its fiber deployment journey. So fiber is one of the most critical pillars of Europe's digital future. That's why Network X featured several exciting sessions exploring fiber deployments, targets, the obstacles to roll out, and of course, the monetization prospects and aspects of it. We had several speakers representing European regulators, Europe's FTTH Council, all agreeing that despite good progress over the past decade, the journey towards universal fiber connectivity remains uneven. Let me throw in some data here to give you a more clear picture. So according to the European Commission's broadband coverage in Europe study, in countries such as Spain and Portugal, FTTP coverage exceeds 90%. In contrast, Austria and Germany, where FTTP coverage remains below 50%, continue to face challenges such as bureaucratic hurdles, reliance on legacy infrastructure, and high rural deployment costs. Also, just to add to that, according to Omdia's research, fiber accounts for over 80% of broadband technology mix in some countries like Spain. However, in Austria and Greece, that fiber penetration is below 15%. That's highlighting a divide not only in coverage, but also in fiber adoption progress across Europe. So it's also worth mentioning at the country level, we see many instances where urban areas enjoy higher coverage and adoption rates compared to rural areas. And this is, of course, due to most often is due to the high costs of deploying fiber in rural regions. And obviously, there is an adoption gap driven by sparse population and low income levels in rural regions. So to some, fiber progress in Europe is real and substantial, and even participants agreed with that. But there are still challenges that needs to be addressed.
Sure. Well, connectivity is really important. But I think, Jason, if you wouldn't mind, also from a US perspective, right, when you hear what's happening in Europe, what's your take on that?
Here's the thing. It's like, I heard Tom Starr say to me once, formerly from AT&T, one of the inventors of DSL. He was like, "We're going to squeeze every last bit out of copper we possibly can." Right? But I mean, it's the thing that keeps coming up, right? And the thing that we are now realizing, and this is not an admonition of fiber. I still think it supports the story, is that speed itself is not really. We've already achieved what everybody needs right now, right? At least for today's use cases, right? And if you have fiber, then you've exceeded it, right? Like by any order, like by several factors. And so it's only, and in the US has also issues with, not just legacy technologies, but the legacy arrangements that were made with certain municipalities, with certain, with either cable or whatever. Right? Those things have to run its course, and everybody is still expecting to get as much money as they possibly can out of the investment that they made, right? And so it really is just all about total cost of ownership. And the United States is huge, right? And so that rural problem is very, very, very big. But I think everybody knows, and even the incumbent, cable operators that we would now say are MSOs, they know, and they're doing all the hybrid deployments. But it will eventually go that way. And then, the US government has put money behind these things in like 2 separate programs in the last 10 years or so with BEAD and stuff. So it's getting there. But I think that, and actually, not to talk about any specific company whatsoever, but there are people who are working for some of those major MSOs that are also working with the standards industry to work on that idea that it's not really all about speed anymore. It's about the quality of the link and latency and, L4S and these new technologies that are making it so that the actual user experience is what it's supposed to be, regardless of how much you're blasting down the pipe,
I think maybe I want to come back to you. We'll see if you have time for that fixed wireless access, because I think that's an interesting extension, which I believe is quite prevalent, or at least being used in the US to extend the network. But Marcus, did you hear the numbers there? Germany is a laggard, we heard. So you need to do some explaining, and your Deutsche Telekom as well.
We are working on the topic, so it's one of our big strategic initiatives that we force on the fiber rollout. It's a very important topic for us. That's really true. Yeah, the good thing is, in the moment, we have a working solution. So the current use cases work with the existing DSL and mobile solutions, but it's not future-proof. And we need a good digital infrastructure. It's our foundation for our future health. For that, it's the right thing to focus it in and close the gaps. And it's one of our strategic initiatives to get the coverage in the country.
To come to your defense, because I also spent some time in Germany and have been to a number of shows every year, like AngerCon or whatever, where the German industry meets, is that, of course, as you were saying, Jason, Germany actually invested a lot in copper, right? And they actually took it to speeds of 200 megabyte, which, by the way, for most people is more than sufficient, right? And also, I believe commercially, hopefully I'm not treading on his toes here, actually, given that those are sunk investments, guess what? It might be economic to keep it running for a while, right? So those things are things also play a role. So anyway, it's just, as I say, to not just hijack you, Marcus, and then come to you.
Well, it's like as much as I enjoy being on the cutting edge of some things, like the concept of total cost of ownership is like this ghost that is always following me around, you know? It's like, well, they'll do it when they're ready.
Tirana Wireless is a global leader in purpose-built next-generation fixed wireless access, delivering high-speed broadband even in the most challenging line-of-sight and non-line-of-sight environments, where traditional wireless and fibre solutions struggle. This resilient technology is deployed by more than 240 providers across 25 countries, closing the digital divide and unlocking revenue opportunities at reduced costs. To learn more about how Tirana is globally transforming broadband access, visit us at tiranawireless.com.
So, Dana, do you want to also talk about the investment landscape as well? Is that something you wanted to cover?
Yes, we had a lot of investors at the event doing speeches. It was quite interesting. Yeah, let's talk about money, because fiber isn't just a tech story, even though that's the part I love as a tech analyst. It's also an investment story. And lately, that story has started to sound different. So the theme of evolving investment priorities was at the front of the discussions at NetworkX. And I remember just a few years ago, around 21 or 22, as we were emerging from COVID chaos, we have had this let's build mantra at the events like NetworkX. Investors were pouring money into the network expansion, chasing that homes passed stats. And at the NetworkX this year, and actually also last year, the tone was slightly different. So rising interest rates, inflation, and wave of never-ending macroeconomic headwinds mean investors want a proof of monetization. So that shift was a hot topic at the event, where speakers just emphasized that fiber is no longer just about coverage. It's about turning infrastructure into sustainable cash flows. Of course, private equity funds, infrastructure funds still remain the backbone of fiber financing, because fiber assets represent robust investment. And during the event, investors have been advocating for fiber investments, but sounds like they're more cautious or selective about fiber projects that they support. That's the kind of the feeling that I get.
Yeah, good. Do you want to add to that, Jason?
Oh yeah, that's exactly the case, right? And Marcus is right in the sense that the truth about deploying fiber is about future proofing, because eventually that's going to be necessary, right? Eventually there will be a use case in which that is in which you're going to have that in place, so it's not so expensive for you to catch up, right? But like I said, it's that return on the investment for operators. And if you look at even so Broadband Forum did a survey 2 years ago, and then they did one this year too, with Omdia actually. So thank you. But and the original one, in their report, they actually included some of the data about how getting more ARPU, average revenue per user, for those who don't know what that is, for speed is like going like this, right? The need to increase that speed is inevitable, but getting the value out of the customer is going right. And so the operators all have to find new ways to get that return on that investment, and the ways that they are doing that are through seeing themselves more as, and I know this term is going to be surprising, but service providers.
Oh, right. Actually provide a service. I see.
But what was it, the term that was coined at last year's Network X? It was like a techcom, right? A technology or a tech provider, right? Or a techco.
Techco, they call it.
Right.
Service co and techco, I think, is the two terms. It's like splitting it, which is the customer angle, and then you have your platforms, if you like, and the infrastructure side. Yeah.
Right. And you'll hear the arguments all day long about, the ones that came from net neutrality, where it's like, okay, well, we need to be able to monetize what people are sending down our pipes in addition to what people are consuming it. And it's not fair and blah, blah, blah. They're never going to win that argument. Right. So it has to be more of a proactive sort of like, we're taking ownership of this, because what happens is you have consumer technology on one side in the cloud, right? And I'll talk about residential for now. Obviously, business access is a little different, but not by much, right? You can think of it. It's certainly me saying data centers here instead of streaming television, right? So you have Amazon and Netflix and all these guys, and those are consumer technologies, and they are companies providing a consumer product to consumers. And then you have the consumers where internet access itself, right? Never mind Wi-Fi. But internet access itself was originally a consumer-only product, right? Like people just made phone calls, and the telcos made some money on the connections, but they didn't care what was going on, right? And then when broadband came about, you had that world collide, and when that collided, the service providers are now suddenly responsible for the quality of the consumer product that the consumer is trying to get, and they are responsible for it, and they do get blamed for it. And so there's this huge opportunity for them to sort of shift and go, you know what, instead of us fighting that, we're going to just completely own it. And that's what they're doing, right? So it's on the lowest hanging fruit about what we call value-added services is just making the quality better and not competing on speed or even cost. If you look at the Broadband Forum report, this year's one, they listed sort of what consumers' top concerns were, like what they would pay for out of their service, and cost was like number 6 on the list. Like they just wanted it to always work. And basically the top 5 where we want it to always work, right? And it's saying it in different ways, right? We want it to always work, and we want it to be fast enough for what we need to do. That's it. That's what they want, right?
It's not that difficult, really, at least on paper, I think.
So the lowest hanging fruit for those value-added services right now, and this is going to be a softball over to Marcus, right? The lowest hanging fruit for those value-added services right now is making sure that the network is always working. Part of that is Wi-Fi, which requires APIs and data and standardization of that data and making sure it all goes into the system. But it's the whole network, right?
So Marcus, what's your view on this?
I think I can underline what has been said, because the telco industry is in a dilemma. It's if you only focus on connectivity, like on fiber or mobile connections, it's difficult to increase the revenues because the market are settled, and it's very, very difficult to get more people, more contracts, more volume. On the other hand, you have the big cost because you have to do fiber to be future-proof. You have to invest in 5G, and it's now coming 6G. You need a spectrum. You need the cell tower. So it's the cost is increasing, and you cannot achieve it on the revenue side. And that's the telco dilemma. And how to come out? Yeah, we will talk later, I think.
You'll maybe talk later. I'm slightly conscious of time, but one comment I just want to make on the comment of fiber, which I have fiber, by the way. And I went straight for the 1 gigabit package. And I thought, let's see if they can do it, because I thought they wouldn't be able to do it. That's a whole other story I can tell you about. The thing is about it, coming back to what Jason said, it just needs to work, stupid. And what I mean by that is once it's running, like it's not in the back of my mind, it's not going to work. Whereas previously when I was on copper, I'd have a call like this and you're wondering, it's my connectivity, whose connectivity is causing the problem. And just like it's suddenly a background thing, which on the one side is great, but on the other side, it's just like breathing air. You just assume it's there, right? So you only miss it when it's not on, right? Which I think your families will know, as presume you're most likely the IT guys at home when you pull the plug, suddenly everyone comes running going, help, what's happened to IT at home? as well. As I say, conscious of time, so I think I'd like to move, if people are okay with it, onto the topic which, Jason, you were kind enough to suggest we talk about as Wi-Fi, which of course sort of sits connected to and close to fiber. It sits on the end of it, I guess. You had some comments you want to make about that. Do you want to?
It goes right along what we were saying. Right? So that customer experience of it always working, like Wi-Fi is the worst part of that, right? It is the worst part of that chain. And unfortunately, I mean, and it's because Wi-Fi is incredibly complicated. It was not originally intended for the kinds of use cases that we try to shove it into now, right? And that's what they're trying to solve at the IEEE and stuff with every new version of Wi-Fi. They're not trying to pump more speed anymore, right? Like Wi-Fi 7 and Wi-Fi 8 are more about reliability. So from the operator's perspective, that is the next lowest hanging fruit, right? Is taking ownership of the Wi-Fi, which again originally was owned by the consumer, right? They just bought their own stuff and plugged their own stuff in, and then the operator would have to deal with it and get blamed for it anyway. And so the operators have taken ownership of that, are now using management systems to make sure that the Wi-Fi is working the way it's supposed to work all the time, as best as it can possibly be. Some of that's active, some of that's, some of that involves human beings. Some of that hopefully does not involve human beings, more and more so in the future, right? But it's just it's literally optimized Wi-Fi. That is the biggest value add, right? And so we already see operators start to compete on this, right? Saying literally, we have the best Wi-Fi, right? That is a phrase that has been uttered, right? And isn't that interesting to say that instead of, oh, I'm going to give you 500 meg for 10 euros, that just doesn't work anymore.
But again, you just translated it into meg or whatever, which doesn't mean anything to someone, right? It's like the numbers and it just, it sort of doesn't translate well.
Right. And I feel for the marketing people, it's like saying one number is bigger than another number is real easy. So it's hard to quantify reliability, but that's basically what's happening. And so, yeah, from the Wi-Fi perspective, that's what it's about. It's like, that's the worst thing from the consumer's experience. It really is. Like, that's what all the data shows. But it's also the thing that's the most necessary. And so the operators are basically taking ownership of that situation and using technologies like user services platform, combined with the standardized data models that we've done working with the Wi-Fi Alliance, to make sure that everything's talking the same language. And that's going to translate later into the whole agentic AI thing, right? Because what we need to do is make sure that the data is all standardized so that everything is talking the same language and learning from the same data set, right?
So what standardization is needed there at the back end, would you say, or on the Wi-Fi side? I mean, obviously the Wi-Fi as a standard, as a wireless standard exists from that perspective, but you're talking about the kit, the architecture, all that sort of stuff, because there's also an event called Fuse, which I was at, where also I think sort of they're talking about these things. But anyway, maybe you could share a bit more into what's happening in that space.
So, I mean, honestly, most of it's been done, right? So on that consumer networking side, when it comes to what was tier 69 and is now USP, and the data model that describes a device, a consumer networking device like a broadband gateway or a Wi-Fi AP, and how that data is structured, how it can be extracted, how it can be pulled, how bulk data can be transmitted. That's all been standardized. The next steps are, a lot of the open source work that's been going on with, say, like RDK and Purple, making sure that the platforms themselves are standardized. And then you'll get to a situation where there'll be a little bit of opportunity for people to build different applications that can maybe, we're never going to standardize the algorithms of how to fix somebody's Wi-Fi, right? That's what everybody's secret sauce is, right? And the secret sauce in the future will also be the data that they have on what Wi-Fi problems are, right? And so that's the differentiator for most of the software companies out there, is how to optimize it, and so the underlying protocols, Easy Mesh and Easy Mesh on top of Purple, on top of RDK plus USP and the data models and all that stuff. That's all standardized. And then the part after that will be plugging it into the larger story so that is end to end, right? So like those network APIs that are being standardized by CAMARA, right? That's the bigger picture, so that that link from what the consumers tried to get to them is optimize the entire way.
I think people don't realize how much that you can actually see from the back end as to how Wi-Fi is working. And as you say, there are different companies and different ways, flavors of services being offered.
And originally that was all proprietary. And then Wi-Fi Alliance, Broadband Forum, we all kind of got together and were like,
opened it up, which comes back to a very nice segue. But Marcus, do you want to add to that at all about Wi-Fi? I see you're sitting in it looks a nice office there from what we can see here. Are you on Wi-Fi right now, or are you on actually physically connected?
I'm physically connected because it's more reliable. Because I don't have Wi-Fi 7 and 8 at the moment. No, I think the important thing is who operates the Wi-Fi router. That's the important question. If it's the operator, then we can influence the things, then we have the visibility, then we can build additional use cases. And that works for the non-technical customers. But the technical ones, they want to own their own router. So they are doing it open source, they're doing it by themselves with a different vendor, and you don't have access to the home router. And that makes the whole topic a little bit open, but difficult.
Yeah, and they're actually they're the grumpiest people too.
And Anna, what about you? What's your take on Wi-Fi and how it affects people's customer experience and how important it is for the telco ecosystem?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something on the point of Wi-Fi experience. It's about 6 gigahertz connectivity spectrum allocation dilemma, which is kind of related to Wi-Fi, quality of Wi-Fi experience. It's been a hot topic in Europe, and it was definitely discussed actually at the extent at the event. Just briefly explain what is the dilemma about. So the question here is whether the 6 gigahertz band should be fully opened for Wi-Fi for better quality and experience, or reserved for mobile 5G use. So at the event, broadband market policymakers and participants expectedly were advocating that 6 gigahertz band is a key for next-gen home connectivity. So to give you a bit of a background, the lower part of the band is already open for Wi-Fi 6E use. It's bringing faster speeds and lower latency, but the upper band is still under review with like Wi-Fi players and mobile operators competing for it. So there's a bit of an argument between them. But regulators like Ofcom in the UK are looking at some hybrid models to balance both sides and maximize benefits. Yeah, so just to add on that point, yeah.
Just a slight question I have from my side. Where's that decided? Is that a national decision? Is that international? Is it the ITU? These uses of these frequencies, but of course, there's efficiency. If we can create some sort of harmonization, it also creates long-term efficiencies coming back to the manufacturers, et cetera, et cetera. So who's deciding this when you say sort of up for discussion? Who does what? Where's that?
So I can talk about EU. So in the EU and in Europe, it's the decisions made by the Europe Commission and also by the national regulators. So it's a bit of a mix.
Fantastic. I think I'm just seeing here also as sort of one of our notes, Jason, was around the need for how standardization, I guess, opening the data models also provides us with access to on top of that, maybe leveraging AI. Is that something you wanted to highlight? Because I think that's also ended up with a good segue. We'll jump right to Marcus's key topic, which, guess what, people, is APIs. But anyway, over to you, Jason, first of all.
No, that's exactly right. And it feeds down to exactly what the power we're going to be able to get out of standardized APIs is the standardization of the data. And we had some people talking at one of the broadband forum talks at the show about this specifically, and it basically came down to the fact that yes, as long as everybody is speaking different languages literally, right? Like even the data types are different depending, right, on the types of information that's being pumped into the learning mechanisms, then you're going to get weird. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. We have to converge on how that data is structured and what the key metrics are, so that everybody is getting, all of the machines are getting the same information and can learn off the same data.
The problem of humanity is just in one. There you go. We all speak the same language, but differently.
But apparently the AirPods have solved it. Like, we now have the Babelfish in our ears.
I wouldn't mind using as a good segue to Marcus. You're all about APIs, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Network APIs. So maybe you want to share again, because maybe again, lots of people on this call will not know about CAMARA, which is on your shirt, just so people who can see that. That's clear. And the other bits that you've been involved with, because you really have been a lion, as we found out about this as well, pushing forward. Yeah.
I was part of the whole thing from the beginning, which was great. I think the starting point was exactly the telco dilemma, which we already mentioned. It's difficult for the telcos to get additional revenues. On the other side, the costs are increasing for all the stuff, and it's not possible to increase the shareholder value. So telcos are forced to look for new sources of revenues. And that was the reason why we started to work on APIs, because we want to monetize our assets in the network and make it available for customers. And it should be done automated, and automatically then you come to APIs. So that was the starting point. What we all saw, I forget to mention, the big digital natives, they use our infrastructure and make big monies and create a tremendous increase of share of shareholder values, while we can't do it. So we have to move in this area to be in the on top services, to be a service provider. And for that reason, you will find this topic in most of the telcos strategies. So, and I think the capabilities what we have are very interesting. It starts that we know a lot of our customers. We have trusted customer data, so we can act as a kind of identity provider, and that helps us to identify fraud. We know the habits of our customers. We know where they are. We know where are the devices. So for that, we can identify if a SIM is changed, if a device is changed, if a customer is called, how long is a call, if the caller sits in a foreign country, if the call is forwarded. So we have a lot of indicators which help us to show it, for example, for a bank, if there is a risk, if there could be fraud. And that's a very good capability. And for that, you can find a lot of APIs already in CAMARA. Of this area. In other markets, like China, you have different frame conditions. So there, the regulation is less important. Let's call it that way. And you have a very centralistic approach. So only 3 big telcos, they align quickly. Let's do QED. Let's take the CAMARA API. Let's do it, build it, sell it. And in the meantime, they make a 2-digit million number of euro revenue per year with it, and it's growing very fast. So it's just a different frame condition. So quality and demand is very present in China. So, but there are additional topics like location. We know where our devices are. We know if there is an assembly of devices. We can give out warnings. So there's a lot of use cases possible. We can do geofencing, that we send notification if a truck comes close to a store, or if a customer passed by his favorite main home store and can get special offers on his phone. So there are a lot of interesting use cases which can benefit from our capabilities. So there is a real business behind.
And who would you consider are the main consumers of the APIs at the moment, particularly in verticals, not companies, but let's say verticals? Who is, let's say, consuming them?
Depending on the market, again. So the Western countries like Europe, like America, they are focusing mainly on these fraud topics. So it's the fintech industry which is very interested, but also customers like Google. We are doing currently a good use case with Google. Google wants to replace the 6-digit code SMS, one-time password by number verification, by silent authentication. So we have implemented it. It's just in a developer preview now. So a limited number of developers have it and test it, and it will quickly move into production. And that will be the first big global scaling network API use case. And it's not only Deutsche Telekom which is involved. All the big players are involved and working with Google on that.
So it's like a silent authentication, if you like. Is that, do I understand you correctly? Sort of having in the background and the people aren't really having to verify themselves.
That's correct. We use the SIM card and the data what we have about the subscribers to do the second factor verification.
That sounds wonderful.
That sounds great indeed as well. And so Jason, what do you want to add to that? Or?
No, I think Marcus kind of hit it in terms of, privacy, right? And so you can do different things in different places. And overcoming that just, I guess, culturally is going to be a task, but some of that can be done via standardization, where it's sort of just expected. Like I know there was another company when they were going to really jump into this managed Wi-Fi thing, it does require a lot of private data, right? And it's still, you're still encrypted and all that, whatever, fine. But, taking that leap of being like, yes, I'm going to provide all this information to a third party who can then help me out and do decisions for me, in most countries has to be opt-in. So for that, they had to make it opt-in. So they were only offering that service to the people who are like, yes, please do this, right? They can't sort of do it by default, which gums up the works a little bit, because the more data you have, the easier it'll be. But, that's my personal opinions about privacy aside. I think it's an unwinnable harm.
You're going to say it's always like this sort of, you have to weigh it up, don't you? Privacy versus security and fraud are all connected in a way, and you can't, yeah.
Right. Really, the fraud, I think, is the most important part, right? It's like, but privacy itself is kind of it's an unwinnable arms race. You have to just kind of act like everybody knows what you're doing.
And is it something you come across at all, Diana? Is it an area that you've researched with the Omdia work? Is it something you...
Yeah, we have dedicated research for APIs, and in general, like attending Network X, I can see that progress, and I'd absolutely agree with what Marcus and Jason said. And one of the probably biggest highlights for me was the maturity of API ecosystem that you can actually see when you attend these events. So we saw this real, world like use cases. So API is moving from proof of concept to production. But of course, there are, I think, still some like scaling and developer adoption remains as a challenges to the fast deployment of APIs.
Yeah, for sure. There was some of it, like in reality, in the Broadband Forum's innovation demonstration booth, where it's kind of this like big live interop thing that's going on. And some of those APIs were they were working. It was, it was all set up. They had put it together ahead of time, multi-vendor. It's working.
Yeah, we have achieved already a lot, but we are not done. That's completely right. So we have implemented CAMARA to standardize the APIs. And Jason, it's not only a technical standardization. The bigger change was the change in the mindset, that all the telcos are sitting in the same boat and have to collaborate to make this successful. And that took really time to convince people and to change the mindset. So that's done. We have the products. Sure, we have to work on the products and improve it and make better ones. The second big step was then to start Open Gateway to standardize the exposure. Because we have a lot of regulation in all the countries. We have to follow it, we'll be compliant. And for that, we need a kind of standardized exposure layer fulfilling all these requirements. So you need, besides the typical API gateway and the transformation from the CAMARA to the southbound, you need a kind of consent management. A lot of the use cases require the consent of the end user. So you need a solution for it. You need a capacity management because you have to safeguard your network. If you think of quality and demand, for example, network neutrality, you need a possibility to monetize. So that means to measure, to rate, to bill. So all that. And you need a standardized way to communicate to the marketplaces, to the aggregators, to the customers. So the word is the Operate API topic from TM Forum. So for that reason, we are happy that Open Gateway and TM Forum have worked on it and have a standard for it. And a lot of vendors already have implemented it, and telcos implement this standard, that we have a exposure in the same manner. So, and now we have a state where we can start with the first use cases. I mentioned Google, for example. It's a global thing, which is great. The same is for TikTok. TikTok is doing the same. We have onboarded them in summer, and now the testing increases and they want to go productive. So that's the second big case, and more will follow. But we have just to fix gaps. So we are learning day by day. For example, in Germany, it's not allowed to have telecom traffic data in American hyperscaler clouds. So you need a sovereign cloud, which is there. We have a Google sovereign cloud. That's okay. But then if you then use Apigee, for example, that should be also capable to be sovereign, which is not in the moment. So we're working on it. And you're learning more and more and improving more and more, but the gaps get smaller. And you will see in future there will come more and more use cases now possible, and we fix the rest of the things on the way.
Well, that's a really good one. I must say, if you stuck with Google, I'd say my mother-in-law is a perfect user, because authentication just isn't her thing, and mobiles and whatever. But when you went on to TikTok, that's a bit far for my mother-in-law. She's not. That would be a new mother-in-law, I must admit, as well.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, but there we go. But she's learning and she's trying hard, as we all are in that sense. So, but anyway, you bring on to an interesting topic, which was about sovereignty and data sovereignty, because I think, again, as the market matures, there've been discussions about public clouds, private clouds. You have all the hyperscalers, in a big way, sort of jumping into the market. But what I think is also realization, it's always then the question of, well, what workloads do you want to place where, for what reason, right? Because there is a cost associated with it as well. So we also see, and it was a topic, and I was at a number of presentations at the event where, as I say, the topic of telco cloud came up, which, if you like, is a private cloud run by the telcos, at least that's maybe my short description of it, for their own purposes. And there is a real reason for it, and that's because hyperscalers, guess what? What do? They optimize the cloud for themselves, because that's how they make money. And that's how they keep the costs down. So unless you follow their roadmap to upgrade or whatever, you're in trouble. And we know that telcos aren't as nimble, and we need stability as well. So I think the opposite reason why operators have now realized, actually, it's not all so sunshiny there. We better actually take back control of our own cloud environment. So Deutsche Telekom, I think, Marcus, you can correct if you want, Das Schiff, I think, is what the Deutsche Telekom public one known is. An orange one is called Silver. And so I guess it's a good question as to what role do the hyperscalers play now in the ecosystem. But the other area I particularly wanted to get to is around the fact that if it is a Deutsche Telekom Orange Cloud, just as examples, it could be BT or someone else, I'm not trying to pick on anyone, is that, guess what? If you're a network equipment provider, your systems don't run on your stack anymore. They have to run on the operator's stack, and that's a different world. So the way that vendors work with operators and the way that operators perceive vendors, it really has to move more to a partnership. And maybe where operators, my take would be that operators also have to become more integrators themselves and take ownership of their own stuff, and actually change their procurement processes to not assume that there's always just one neck to strangle as such. But anyway, that's my take on that topic. I just wanted to put it out there. And if you have any comments on that, anyone to take that one up at all?
That's already happened with the home gateway. Like that's already happened, right? Like the operators took ownership of that there, and it kind of went a full circle, but you know how things kind of go like this. Like, it was tell the vendor to do everything, wait for them to do it, get it back, then do this. Then I would say probably over the last 10 years, the operators have been doing more of their own integration. And then now they're just outsourcing that integration to integration houses, right? So they're still doing a multi-vendor situation. They're still putting pressure on the vendors. They're still making sure that they're involved in the process, but they have somebody doing it for them,
That's an interesting point. Marcus, have you got a view on this?
Yeah, I think you have to take several decisions. The one is, do you want to have one monolith or do disaggregation and then earn the integration task? That's the one decision. And the second one is make or buy at the end. Because, for example, for the critical and differentiating elements in the network, we decided to do it by our own. That's also an important topic which we should consider.
Absolutely. And Dana, what about you? Is this a topic you've come across?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, obviously, telco cloud and data sovereignty is a big topic and it's getting bigger and bigger, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And vendors do need to act as true collaborators, supporting that automation, cloud native lifecycle management, and like a wider sovereignty goals. And you mentioned about the procurement, and I think it's also shifting quite fast from rigid CapEx models to more flexible consumption-based frameworks that match cloud economics and speed as well.
A very good point. You actually need a different economics behind it as well, don't you? Just generally without the procurement process, but actually the way how you sell the value as well, which can change over time. Very good, very good. I'd like to move on to one last topic, which is also something I work on as well, so I have some view on it, which is the topic of automation. Automation, network automation, I should be more specific. So what you need to achieve and what operators are trying to achieve is one, as we've mentioned, I think Marcus was also saying, like the ability to increase your revenue top line is limited. So where operators need to move to is reduce the costs. So we see the boards of multiple companies saying, the answer is AI. But if you look at the network side of things in particular, I'll come back to in a minute, actually that has limitations. And the baseline before you even think about any AI is using automation to create a standard view of the network and standard documentation and standard data population of the network, because without which actually an AI is also useless because it's not going to work. So we're seeing that the operators are trying to use automation to become more agile. Also, the whole point of skills walking out the door. I was listening to a podcast, someone else's podcast this morning was saying about actually we need to somehow automate things because the staff of today or the staff of tomorrow are not going to be the people who've been in the industry for 30 years and have that knowledge. So, you need to sort of build that knowledge into...
It's a weird gap. Right. It's like you have totally green people on one hand and then the experts that are leading on the other side.
And I heard one guy mention a really good one, which was he talks about algorithms. So AI isn't the answer to everything, right? It's just a tool set. And you have algorithms versus what one guy was calling them AI, which is random algorithms, if you like. So and you need to achieve a deterministic approach. So deterministic means that you actually are assured that what you actually ask the network to do can be done in a repeatable way. And again, lots of people over egg on what an AI can do or not. But again, I want to put it out there because I think it's misunderstood in the industry quite a lot how far this technology can go. And automation is as important, if not more important, because without which you're never going to get anywhere with the AI. So that's my little bit on that. But anyone to take that one up at all and comment as to what you've seen and how these things are used?
I guess automation is a big topic, but what we see now, most of the kind of momentum is now in a specific domain rather than end-to-end automation. And there's a TM1's maturity levels from level 0 to level 5 and aim of many telcos now to achieve that level 4 automation. But it's really difficult because it means telcos need to integrate AI, which, as you rightly mentioned, AI is just a tool. They need to integrate AI into legacy systems, which are often fragmented and not cloud native. And obviously, there are further challenges like poor data quality, organizational silos, And as you mentioned, they need to upskill the workforce. So all these things slow down the operator's journey towards the full automation.
Fantastic. Good insights there indeed. And Marcus, have you got something you want to add to that around AI? Sitting on top of your APIs?
It's a necessary topic because we have to reduce cost, and automation is one way. The other way is to use the capabilities in the NAT cores, to have standardization over NAT cores, to do things in the same manner in all the NAT cores, which also brings the cost down. And yes, we are working on it, and even on autonomous networks. That's a big topic already, using AI. Let's see what we can achieve. It's just starting. It's just in progress, but we're working on it because we believe we have to be part of it.
And Jason, you're nodding. Anything you wanted to?
Yeah, I know. I think Diana kind of hit it, where it's eventually you will find the place where everything is fragmented, and those things were fragmented around the places that people were differentiating before, right? So like that's the big uphill battle you have in most situations like this is overcoming the people who have been making money off of a certain way of things being for a long time, right? And that's sort of the enemy of standardization. And it's one of my best friends who's also the technical chair of the Broadband Forum. We've been working together for a very long time. We have this running gag that there's like a 12-step process of every single technology, right?
Is that a curve? Is that like a life curve type thing? Life cycle curve?
It's like everything's fragmented, and somebody wants standardization, and then people fight the standardization, and then they accept it, but then they flaw it, and then they go through all this stuff. So every single technology goes through the same process, right?
Have you written that down somewhere? It'd be interesting to see that.
I really should.
You should. I think this is it.
Yeah.
I would think we could all learn something there. It could become.
So it's funny because you can see it happen every single time, right? I think with the AI situation, it's interesting because the automation and AI are separate, right? Like you could do one without you could do automation and can do automation without it. And so it's exactly what you said about the algorithms, right? So that's right now it is possible for people to have some secret sauce around how to optimize networks in a certain way for certain reasons, right? Without any AI whatsoever. What the AI does is either makes it so that those things, get better over time outside of the control of the people who invented it. And in that case, it's the data that's important. And then the other thing is the agentic AI stuff, right? It's just the ability to have it automatically make those decisions. But from a standardization perspective, to solve what Diana was talking about, we've covered a little bit about what has to happen, right? As long as people are willing to let go a little bit and realize the inevitability of standards, and getting them to let go a little bit about one part of their secret sauce, the format of the data itself, then that will help speed all of that along. Right. But I think the most important part of this conversation is that the automation is the use case, right? Even though you can do it without the AI, the automation is the use case of the AI, right? And so you're not going to really use it for not too much else, right?
Fantastic. Well, thanks for those comments as well. I wanted to give you all sort of, and you may want to think about this, is there any particular topic? I'm more thinking of the show that wasn't mentioned or you thought could have been highlighted more or something like that as a sort of final comments. We could just do around there and then I can sort of wrap up and close this great podcast. So anyone to go first there? Marcus, maybe, have you got anything that you felt was or not mentioned or want to highlight?
Yeah, sure. I think we have touched a lot of topics only on the surface. We can do deep dives in every detailed topic, but one topic which we have completely skipped was how does AI relate to APIs? Can be the content of a future podcast if you want, because it will take time to explain.
Okay, that's a deep dive one as well. And Anna?
It's difficult to say, but I think some deeper discussions on implementations and challenges were needed. So, for example, we've heard a lot about AI and sovereignty, but less about how operators can practically integrate this into their legacy systems at scale. So this is one thing. And as I mentioned, digital sovereignty, as it was a big thing. I think more clear roadmap for regulation and cross-border collaboration was missing. And that's critical, especially for Europe, if they want to balance innovation with control. I think that bit was a little bit missing, yeah.
Those are big topics. Like not just missing, like the darn big hole there, which I don't think anyone's solved, but that's a whole nother matter. And Jason?
I think from the show perspective itself, I think I'm excited to see what we're going to see in Vienna, right? Because I think going to the same place 3 times, you start to see sort of a drop off a little bit, maybe in the attendance. But it's like, I want to make sure that the topics never get redundant. And I don't think they are, but I think that what we experienced from sort of the different talks, in, either the ones that we were giving at the broadband forum basis talks or the ones that we were saying, it's like, there's the fact that operators aren't going to be able to increase revenue just by offering connectivity is a thing that I think people are still unwilling to say out loud. Right? Or if they do, they're like, yeah, but this value added service stuff, I'm not too sure about it. And that was actually the results we got from the survey, right? Where that people were really excited about it 2 years ago, and now they're a little bit more trepidatious about it. And it has to do with the kinds of things. And actually the biggest barrier, right, to bring it back to the people, right, and the changing the mindset, the biggest barrier that they said was that they don't have the sales and marketing infrastructure to sell value-added services to their end users, right? Like the organization itself doesn't get it. So I think that in the future, in a year's time, when we're finally willing to say it out loud, that speed is not going to get you more revenue, then I think you'll see a shift in the topics of Network X and maybe a shift in what people are offering, right? And the kinds of people that show up on the show floor.
Well, thank you very much for teeing up what I was about to say, what I was potentially missing. And I just think we're a bit of, we call it navel gazing. It's the industry among itself, which as yourself is, given the size of the show, is useful for the industry to meet. And I'd say the breadth of industry I really appreciated. But somehow verticals being involved and people, the end user side, maybe enterprise side, where people can listen to stories as to how it really impacts people, which I guess is part of what this podcast is about, is trying to find those stories from the field and make them real and make them digestible. Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of good ground here, guys, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy days to be on the podcast. And I think we've covered a bunch of topics from fiber and broadband and Wi-Fi and APIs, network APIs, automation. Yeah, I think we've covered a lot, plus, of course, the general, trends in the market. So appreciate it. So you're all now part of Digital Tel Talk family. So thanks for being on. Thanks for being my guest.
Thank you.
Cheers, Ian. Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
We are honoured to be media partners with Network X at this year's flagship event from Informa Connect to do with all things telecommunication, which was held in Paris this October. Big news is that next year this event is moving to Vienna, so mark your diaries for the 13th to 15th of October 2026. To be one of the first to access our interesting interviews from this event with Orange and the Telecommunications Industry Association, amongst others, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join the community by following us on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening and stay tuned.